A client without an IP address is like a ship without a rudder, or water, or a hole. By the time we're done here, we will examine the 3 DHCP styles, which are client, server, and relay, and where each one of them are used. It's true, without an IP address, you really can't do anything on a network. And in our networks of today, we have not just a few, but thousands of clients that attach from our managed devices, the computers that we take care of with Active Directory or Azure or whatever else, to the BYOD world. Everything needs IP addresses. So rather than statically assign them one by one, the best thing that you can do is allow your devices to do the work for you. Now, it used to be back in the day that I would always say, well, you can configure a Cisco router as a DHCP server, but nobody really does that because most people are interested in using their own DHCP server. And that DHCP server usually runs on Windows, usually runs Active Directory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all managed right here. And that's great because you've got a graphic interface and all that kind of stuff. But in today's world, we have the world of the cloud, the world where everything's up in Office 365 or Google Docs or. So a lot more businesses are choosing to forego servers on their internal networks, especially the small, mid-sized businesses, and just put everything up in the cloud. But if you don't have a server, you don't have a DHCP server unless you start using your Cisco devices as DHCP devices. And just about all of them can be DHCP servers. The routers, multi-layer switches, they can all do DHCP services. And what I have found over the years is I actually not just, do this because I don't have a server, but I prefer to have DHCP server running on the router. And that's simply because of 2 reasons. One is it's more stable, in Jeremy's opinion, because the router's always running, right? I'm not going to say anything bad about the Microsoft side of the shop, but there are times that the server reboots, service packs, it's frozen, et cetera, and that literally causes the whole network to go down because nobody can get an IP address anymore. So let's put it on something that is always running anyway and never has to reboot, the Cisco router. So that being said, I want to show you the 3 DHCP services. In this video, I'm going to just talk about them as in, what are they? DHCP client is the ability for a device, and it could be a switch, it could be a computer, it could be a smartphone, and often is a smartphone. I've never seen somebody statically set the IP address on a smartphone. It's the clients of the network that are asking for an IP address, and they say, hello, I need a DHCP address. And in the IPv4 world that we live in today, that will be a broadcast message. In the IPv6 world, it's a multicast message. It no longer hits everybody. It just goes straight to the DHCP servers. But here it goes to everybody, and that defines a DHCP client. So you're saying that you can configure a switch as the DHCP client? Actually, that's exactly what I'm saying. Matter of fact, I wasn't planning on doing this. I was saying this would be a concept one, but let me move my console cable over to the switch side. Dinosaur down. Switch side of the house. I'm going to go to our switch right here, which is actually, I believe, the only one that does not have an IP address. Let's bring it back up to configuration window. There we go. AZ switch 03. I'll exit out because we had the wrong message at the top there. There we go. I never set this guy up since we did the VLANs. Good grief, type it. To be on to have a management IP address on the correct VLAN. I'll do a show VLAN right here. You can see we created the VLANs. The VLANs are working, but if I do a show IP interface brief, this switch actually still has the old, this is when we first started the skills on assembling the network configuration, the old VLAN 1 configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into global config mode, VLAN 1, no IP address. I'm ripping that. Actually, what am I doing? I went into the VLAN. It should be interface VLAN 1. Actually, good lesson there for all of us. The VLAN, when you type in VLAN 1, you're accessing the layer 2 VLAN, essentially the shell that is a VLAN, the thing that you can put ports into that segments them from others. When you type in interface VLAN 1, that's when you create or manage your switch virtual interface, your SVI, which is what we're doing here. And that's where I can go in and type in no IP address. It removes it. I'll do a show IP interface brief. And you can see VLAN 1 no longer has an IP address. So I'm now going to say, I don't want to do static anymore. I want to do dynamic. So I would go into interface VLAN 10. Because again, looking back at our diagram, those are the VLANs that we're using now. VLAN 10 is our static or our management VLAN. That's where all of the IP addresses for all these devices should be. So I'm going to go into the switch. Let's bring this back up and do IP address. And you see that I have the option right there, DHCP. Boop. This is now a DHCP client. This is how you configure a Cisco device as the DHCP client. I'll go back and do that show IP interface brief. And you can see right now, it's like, I need an IP address. I'm not getting one because there's no DHCP server on the network yet. That's going to be exactly what we configure right now. Now the question might be, would you do that? I mean, would you have a Cisco device, like a switch, actually get its IP address via DHCP? So back in the day, I would say absolutely not. You want to statically assign any of your network devices. But I've gone through enough IP addressing changes now, meaning where you come in and you redo all the IP addressing on one of the networks to say, I kind of prefer DHCP these days, because when you configure the DHCP server, which is the next element I want to talk about, when you set that guy up, you can actually do reservations. You can say, hey, this guy's MAC address, I want to assign it this IP address. Let's just say 10.16. This is .1, .2, .3. We'll make him .4, let's say. I want to assign him that, and I can go in there and say that MAC address is always going to get this IP address. And so it stays DHCP. And if I ever change the addressing scheme, like, I want to go to 10.32, all I got to do is I got to go to the router and just reconfigure all the reservations. I'll show you how to configure a reservation a little bit later. It's just a list of IP addresses and MAC addresses, and I can just go down the list rather than going device by device by device, statically reassigning them. That's a big deal, and a lot of people, a lot of networks are doing that nowadays, doing DHCP with reservations rather than statically assigning addresses all around the network, right? Makes it a lot easier. So last one, DHCP relay. I know this whole time I've been talking about this guy as the DHCP server because that's what we're going to configure in the next video. But a lot of organizations do still have a DHCP server on the network, and a DHCP server is exactly that. It's a server. And this port, let's just say fast Ethernet 0/3, is in a VLAN. And what VLAN do you think this one would be in? Probably 10. Because that's our static, that's our managed devices VLAN. This one was voice over IP, this one was our clients, this was BYOD, right? So we would have this guy in VLAN 10. Well, a VLAN is a subnet, right? It is a network, and that means when there's a broadcast, it stays inside of that VLAN 10, okay? So what does that mean? What does that mean when we have a client over here on VLAN, let's just say 30, right? It's like my kindergarten 3. VLAN 30 right there. It's sending a broadcast message because it needs a DHCP address, and that's how it gets one. It's like, hello, I don't have a DHCP address. That will go, and it will go out and hit every port that belongs to VLAN 30. What about that guy? He will never hear that message. He will never see that DHCP request, and it will die. It will not get an IP address. Actually, if it's any modern device, it will auto-generate one of those 169.254 addresses, which is what a DHCP client does when it doesn't get an IP address, right? So how do you get broadcasts from VLAN 30 over to VLAN 10 so this guy can hear about them? That's the job of the third DHCP service, DHCP relay. The way it works is you go underneath the interface, which in this case is going to be our HQ router. It'll be that VLAN 30 kind of sub interfaces. We set this guy up with switch virtual interfaces because he has a built-in switch. So you go under that interface and you say, I want to relay, I'll show you the command in the next video. I want to relay broadcasts from this network. When they're received, I want to relay them down to this. And as long as I go on that server and create a scope, a DHCP scope for VLAN 30, and that would be the 10.16.4/23 subnet. As long as I create that scope on there, the DHCP server goes, oh yeah, that's great. And it will pass it back to the router, who will then, here's the name, relay it back down to that client so that it can receive it. Now I took a step back and look at the screen. I'm like, that's a lot of scribbles. So let me just clear this off. One of the last things I want to mention is one of the cool factors of DHCP relay is when it receives the broadcast. So it comes in as a broadcast. It will actually convert it to a unicast message that goes straight to the server that you specify. You literally tell this router, relay it to this IP address. Let's just say 10.16.0.100. I'll just make one up, right? Go to that IP address directly. The server receives it directly, sends a unicast message back, and then it sends it directly back down to that guy. That's great because you're not flooding broadcast traffic between your subnets, because that kind of undoes the whole purpose of VLANs in the first place, right? Cool. So that is DHCP services. DHCP client, we even set one up on AZ Switch 03. DHCP server, which you can have a separate server, but you can configure a router, which is what we're going to do next, and DHCP relay. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.